Hello, friends, fans, and dairy products of all ages. This is Cheese of Ages here with another episode of The Main Reason, the show dedicated to showing you champions in various MOBAs, although pretty much it's only League of Legends right now, that you should have as a part of your arsenal as one of the main champions that you play for a given role. I've pretty much hit on champions that can do various positions, in one individually and multitask in a lot of cases. For instance, Nautilus can top or support and also jungle. Pantheon can top or jungle. Stuff like that. A couple of champions are more focused that I've put on. But, yeah. Today's option is going to be somebody that can go pretty much anywhere on the map with varying degrees of success. His weakest role by far is jungle, and followed by like ADC, support, like top lane, and then mid, at least in my opinion. Some people would argue like the positioning of support and ADC. But he could generally do anything on the map reasonably well. His jungle clear speed before he gets an item to add AoE damage to his clears, like the AP one, is pretty abysmal, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if you're not an experienced jungler. But it's still okay, and his ganks are phenomenal actually, which makes him a potent mid laner, which is why I put it slightly above Kenan top. He can roam for bottom and make use of his supremely powerful ganking skills. Which is also why I put ADC slightly lower on the list, because ADCs naturally roam the least in the average gaming play, so he loses a lot of his potency. There are strengths and advantages to Kennen in each individual position. So let's go over his kit in minor detail. His passive makes every ability he has put a charge on the target, and on the third charge the target is stunned. It's not a long CC, but for a stun it's actually decently long. It's not like a Morgana root length, but it stuns, so they can't do anything at all, while Morgana is a root. So it's for a stun, it's a sizable one, especially given how his kit works around it, and his ultimate. We'll be getting to that bit a little bit later, because it's like the fourth ability. His Q is something that sometimes you max first, sometimes you max it last, sometimes you max it second. It's very few champions have that much deviation in what they level. But Q is what you max first if you are in a situation in which you have to farm safely. If you don't have to farm safely, you're usually going to be maxing your W first. In some situations, a lot of people would argue that if you're not going to use the Q to farm safely, you max Q last, because other than making it easier to farm with it, it doesn't really bring a lot to your kit. But essentially, the Q is just a line skill shot with a reasonably respectable range that just whips out there, it's quick, and hits the thing with your passive. It's pretty good. It's pretty nice. It works kind of like an Ezreal Q, but with a little extra benefit, and a little bit less damage, I think, where you can auto and then chain a Q onto it for a wah-wah, 1-2, so make last hitting easier, or to add a quick trade to it. It's pretty good for trading and safe farming. You can just sling it out there. It's also a decent ability for when you are playing like Kenan in a supporting role, because it's very long range poke that you can combine with your W to whap, spow, and just get a serious chunk of damage off of a squishy target in the early game, and the mid game once you started getting a couple of items. But yeah, moving on, the W, which in a lot of situations you want to max first, has a passive and an active component. The passive component makes it where every so many number of auto attacks, fourth I think, deals bonus damage based on your AD, which this is the thing that makes ADC Kennen viable, along with how the Q combines with the auto attack. And formerly his auto attacks were decent for ADC, but they changed that. But yeah, it scales up respectably as well, up to at max rank 80% of your AD, so it's a decent nice whap. Yeah, so that proc not only gets your freaking static on there, it freaking hits for 180% of your ADA. And if you crit with that sucker, that's pretty damn. Ow. Pain hurt. But the active component detonates your charges. Well, not detonates, but it basically lashes out with lightning against any and all targets that have a static charge on them. And that's pretty nice. It's good for like wombos, and it's pretty good for like, because this static lash out also puts another charge on the target, it enables you to stack up that third charge really fast. For instance, if you get that empowered auto, and then like your Q off, and then bam, static detonate, instant stun in just a matter of like a second. You just like throw that out, Q's like whap out, detonate, stun, whap out, detonate. You could do that in less than 2 seconds and stun them pretty harsh, and then have enough to get like an extra auto attack in there, or gap close with the E. The E, maxing this second alongside W max first gives you a lot stronger wave clear in the mid to late game, because you can static charge through it, doing a substantial amount of damage to each on a low cooldown, and then detonate the charges to just like get a hefty chunk of damage off on the minion wave. And plus you have the lower cooldown, so you can get around more frequently, because this ability essentially doubles your flat move speed, because it gives you as much flat move speed as you have move speed, and turns you into a little ball of lightning that you can pass through units, completely ignoring unit collision, and applies a nice chunk of damage and also a static charge. This is pretty much going to be your like an initiation and your escape, and also like a component of your wave clear combination, as I said before. It's really good, really nice, really fun. You just like, gotta go fast. Now all this ties together in working with your ultimate, which is like has a lot of trading and also team fight potential. Used correctly in the right situations, and depending on who you're up against, this ultimate can enable you to 1v2 people very, very easily. It's an AoE around you, and this big like lightning ring forms around you, and you start firing random bolts at enemy champions, dealing a respectable chunk of damage, but not like a huge amount. They will be shredded by this, and like notably if you're building AP. And each bolt applies a charge of your passive. At first rank, you can relatively easily, like just in almost no time at all, stun a person with no charges on them. If you have charges on one of them, you can easily stun 2 people with this and do a respectable amount of damage to them. And as you put more ranks in it, you get more bolts. So at maximum rank, you can do this into a full team and stun all of them relatively quickly. This is a big-ass ability the size of a team fight. So unless they've got repositioning abilities to knock you away, which really hurts Kenan hardcore, because he has few ways to get back in. If he's gotten in, got knocked out, he doesn't have much get back in there without using flash or something. If they don't have something to pull you off, or they don't focus you, your team will just tear them apart with proper follow-up, because you're just like AoE shredding and stunning, and it makes it an amazing initiation or counter-initiation, and not counter-initiation, I didn't mean to say that, but it does make a nice counter-initiation tool. It makes a nice primary initiation, secondary initiation, and a counter-initiation tool, and it's really good all-in tool, as I said before. If you could just like go in on it, like 1 or 2 people, depending on how what your build is at that point, how far ahead you are, you could go in on 2 people, and if they don't have like a significant amount of CC to bring you down, you could just take out 2 people relatively easily. He's pretty much works sort of like a combination burst mage, in the sense that like you sling your abilities together in a certain way. Not a certain way, but you sling your abilities together and then pop the stun, and that gives you a big window for trading opportunities. And you just can go up in there. As far as strengths and weaknesses and individual roles, I work from down from top to bottom. Uh, Essentially, he's not as good as he used to be in top lane, but uh, he has that safe farming and that high CC, that hard. He's hard to gank because of his little like lightning charge thing that basically doubles his move speed. He's really fucking hard to gank. He's got really good counter initiation and initiation, so he's really good at that sort of thing. So he has a lot of good top lane tools to be a top lane carry. But right now the meta is not top lane carry. It's top lane like tank that does a fuck ton of damage because of how tank itemization works these days. And he has a bit of trouble early game with tanks. He is usually best built a little bruisery, with starting out. Well, as of right now, they're changing this item, so I don't know how it'll affect it. It's probably going to be a drastic nerf to a lot of AP champions, but Zhonya's is pretty much the first item in a lot of situations. So that's armor and decent AP, and that thing where if you're lightning rushing, your Zhonya's up, and your lightning ultimate still going on around you, stunning people. Really nice tool. And then it's also, he usually after that he goes Rylai's, because like slowing people with his Q or with his static charge or his ultimate is really fucking effective. And it's after those two items that you start getting penetration. So you either like not delay your core to get penetration, or you have trouble with tanks. As far as mid goes, he's actually a little bit stronger mid than he was top, because he kind of wibble wobbles in a lot of situations. Because like he formerly was better top than he was mid, but now he's slightly better mid because mids are squishier these days. And since he builds sort of bruisery, he fares a little bit better against assassins. Especially because he has good counter engage and can just like either like Zhonya's up or lightning charge to break away from the burst combination, or fire up his like ultimate to like stun them and slip away or burst them down. He's got a lot of burst and a lot of counter engage, and early on against a lot of assassins that can be really tricky to deal with. As long as you respect their burst and know how they operate, you can counterplay them a little bit nicely with Kennen, as compared to a lot of other AP mid laners that don't have tools to deal with assassins. And because he's like fulfilling a carry role in the mid lane, he doesn't lack in damage or in CC because of how his kit operates. He's really, really nice in mid lane because of how his kit works and his strengths and weaknesses. He can like have comparable range to a lot of AP mid laners too. So inevitably, when the upcoming patch comes out that gives like AP mid laners a bunch of more tools, I'll have to reevaluate. But I don't know. He's an AP mid laner. He's an AP champion, so I'm pretty sure he can benefit a bit from those items too. Although a lot of them don't work as good on Kennen as they would every other mage. Well, frankly, it's an immobile mage patch, and Kenan is not an immobile mage. So, I don't know. Maybe the items will be really OP on him. I'm not sure. That's one of those things that require play. Anywho, let's go and keep on moving down. We're going to consider jungle next on the line, because bot lane has no jungle beneath it. As I think I hit it on it before, but his early clears are terrible until he gets the it's not Runeglaive anymore, I don't think, but the AP jungler item that gives you Luden's proc, so you have AoE. His clears are terrible until you get that, but his ganks are amazing with that ultimate, where you can just like bolt in there and then like activate that and quickly stun them and provide a whole bunch of burst damage. His ganks are really phenomenal. But his early clears are terrible. Once he gets that freaking AP jungler item, it's actually somewhat decent clear speed. And past mid game, he's actually got pretty good clear speed. Not phenomenal, but eh. And it's definitely not something you want to go against like a heavy counter jungler or somebody that can farm their jungle really fast. So it's got clear strengths and weaknesses to it. Now, moving on, support. Now, support has Kennen has distinct weaknesses. He doesn't respond go super well against hard engage that is found in the bot lane, because bot lane hard engage is like very CC heavy. He does have decent counter engage and engage, but with a shit ton of burst from like two people, he can't peel for his ADC. And if he got caught out, and a lot of the time, even though he builds a bruiser, he's not usually very tanky. And for the large majority of the game, he's sort of a bruiser, not a tank. And he still has a lot of base squishiness to deal with, so because he's a mage. So he doesn't respond well to like a Braum that is really solid on mechanics, or a Leona, or a Nautilus that can like CC hard engage, and then have a champion ADC that it has like really good immediate follow up. It will be less dissipated with the ADCs, like one of the ADCs that don't have swift follow up. But a tank or heavy CC initiator with a swift follow up bursty champion like a Lucian or something like that will give Kenan a really hard time in the support and the ADC role to an extent, depending on what his support is. But yeah, it's decent in the right lane composition against the right composition. I said the lanes he's weak against. He is a good counter poke lane, or a decent. If you're going for a poke lane, Kenan is really basically a really very good poke lane support, and because he's got that like wombo-ness and the CC, and he works phenomenally well with bot lane carries that can chain CC onto people, like having a decent slow at the minimum, so that Kenan can like wobble things onto them, and have like respectably fast follow up to go on in his hard engages. And he works phenomenally well with the limited number of ADCs that have hard CC. I've played Kenan support mainly with my friend Jack, who plays a lot of Jhin, and I've never lost that lane because they synergize so well together. Kenan could just like lob that Q down there, and he can follow up with the W, rooting them immediately, and then Kenan could just go up in there and like keep whopping on them to stun them, or like Kenan can like whop and get the stun off, and then the W follow up chain to it. Kenan and Jhin's CC work really freaking well together, and chain really good, and Jhin's got really good burst once you like play around it. If you learn how the right phase of the game against the right composition, and playing around each other reasonably well, it's phenomenal. It's really, really fucking good. And Jhin's cleanup ultimate is really good for like, okay, we've shredded them tremendously with our ultimate and combined fire, and now they're not getting away because of the ultimate. And plus, Kenan makes up for a lot of Jhin's weaknesses, and Jhin makes up for a few of Kenan's weaknesses, because Kenan's got really good team fighting, and the AoE CC crowd control like also brings more damage to the table, and making up for like Jhin's 4-hit combination needing to being in like waves. It's like, okay, I've done a lot of damage, now I need to reload. Okay, I've done a lot of damage, I need to reload. And facilitates the cleanup ultimate a little bit better in the team fight situation, because he's got such much AoE damage there, and he can like chase down people and lay on some damage so Jhin can W root to enable cleanup. So they patch together really nicely, and what they functionally do for each other. It's a really nice synergy. Now, as far as ADC Kenan goes, I don't have a lot of successful experience with ADC Kennen because I only did it after the nerfs to ADC Kennen happened, but it's respectable. It's uh, not necessarily great, but honestly, even though I've never won a game when I was ADC Kennen, a lot of the games were situations that were beyond my control that honestly I would have won. I would have lost on any ADC. It's not bad. I just have never won with it. The strengths in it are he's got the Ezreal Q kind of thing, and he's got that nice little AD scaling on his W where every so often he does AD based bonus damage. So that's really nice. And he's got counter engage and engage and mobility, which is our things you don't normally find on an ADC. It's I'm gonna be hard to gank. I'm just gonna streak away in my lightning ball form. It's they're coming on me. I'm going to use my ultimate in an AOE, and even if I die, I've gotten several strikes of my ultimate off and done it's okayish damage. Not good by any stretch of the imagination unless you go for Rage Blade. But you usually will get at least one stun off, unless you're really unlucky. So, even if you die, and if you don't die, then you've got AoE stuns, and you're bow and doing some decent things. I've always, even though I've never won it, I've always done okay, and would have lost with any ADC, except maybe Caitlyn, which I play shit tons of. It's okay, you would win with the champion you've played more than any other champion in the game. Because it's the ADC you started with, and one of the first champion you bought with a IP. But yeah. I've been playing Caitlyn ADC since I started playing the fucking game. So yeah, I could have won those matches with Caitlyn, but I don't know. Anyway, Kenan has various strengths and weaknesses that make him very versatile and good in a lot of spots. Another thing that I forgot to mention that makes Kenan support decent is Kenan support pretty much builds the same way as Kenan in any other spot, except ADC. So you could pretty much be a backup carry to an extent. I mean, he brings so much utility to the table that isn't item based. So you could even if you don't have a lot of items, you can provide a bunch of utility as long as you've got some tanky stats to not get killed immediately. And in situations where Elena's pushed up and nobody can go off and deal with it, oftentimes we need somebody to clear the minions at the base. The support's the only one there. Well, we're fucked. The support usually can't clear very well. Kenan, in that sort of situation, can clear really fast, and he can split push, even when he's a support. So he can be a backup carry if necessary. And he has a lot of utility, but he's got a lot of damage and capability to be a carry. And from that role, that he can put in some more effort. He can make up for other people not doing so good. So it's a decent solo queue pick if you're dual queuing with your ADC. It's really nice in the right composition. So yeah, very versatile champion, and one of the champions that you could easily one trick, being I play this regardless of what position I'm in. Because he could do everything pretty decently, with distinct strengths and weaknesses. Anyway, this will be Cheese of Ages signing off. Coming up soon, maybe sometime next week, I'll be putting out some more pencil and paper RPG content focused on a follow-up to that kineticist character I was talking about previously, because some interesting things have happened. And basically an arc of the campaign, a act of the campaign will be coming to a close next session, and it'll be a good spot to relay everything that has happened, because whoa, big things have happened in the life of the character. So anyway, Sheets of Ages, signing off.